everyone, this is Martina Meyer. I'm the founder and director of Animal Rescue Cambodia, which is an animal shelter in Phnom Penh. I'm also currently a master student in shelter medicine, which is in the field of veterinary sciences. So in this video, I want to talk about how often and when to vaccinate young kittens and puppies. So disclaimer up front, the topic of vaccinations is huge. I won't be able to cover everything in this video, so I will only focus on what I consider the most important points. For this video specifically, I will focus on so-called core vaccinations, which for kittens are feline 𝗟𝗫𝗙𝗓𝗓 virus, feline 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗙𝗚𝗏 virus, and feline herpes virus. For puppies, I will focus specifically on core vaccinations that are the 𝗟𝗓𝗏 virus, parvovirus, adenovirus, and parainfluenza virus. Sometimes core vaccinations can change depending on which location you are in and how high the risk is of diseases in a certain region. So some of you have probably learned that vaccination should start once the kitten or puppy is 8 weeks old, and then again 3 to 4 weeks later at roughly 12 weeks old. However, more recent publications have shown that such a vaccination schedule is not necessarily the right option for some animals. I will put some links with references in the description box below. So to provide the best possible care for each individual animal, a couple of different questions and factors need to be considered. Before I go into these, I first want to explain a little bit more about how do we actually decide when vaccination should be given. So kittens and puppies receive so-called maternally derived antibodies, or MDA, from their mothers. They usually get those within the first 24 hours after birth through nursing. That is also why it is crucial that young kittens and puppies are nursed by their mothers, especially right after birth. MDA are essential because they can protect kittens and puppies from several diseases. Unfortunately, they don't last very long and they can wear off after a few weeks or months. And that is exactly the point where it becomes dangerous for kittens and puppies, because that's where they can be more susceptible to potentially dangerous or deadly diseases. The thing is, if a kitten or puppy gets a vaccine while the MDA are still working, the vaccine cannot work because the antibodies will basically not allow the vaccine to do its job. That is why a lot of veterinarians vaccinate at 8 weeks of age, assuming that the antibodies will be weak enough for the vaccine to work. The problem is that we don't really know when antibodies will wear off for each individual animal. For some of them, it might be at 4 weeks of age, but for some of them, it also might only be at 20 weeks of age. And this is where the 8-week, 12-week schedule can become problematic. Because especially if you have an animal that is in a high-risk environment, meaning exposed to a lot of diseases, and at the same time it has lost the antibodies at an early age, let's say at 4 or 6 weeks, a vaccine at 8 weeks of age is simply already too late. Latest publications therefore recommend different vaccination protocols, taking into account not only an animal's age, but also the animal's circumstances as a whole. So to provide the best possible care for each individual animal, a couple of different questions and factors need to be considered. One of the first questions to ask would be, is the animal older than 4 weeks? We usually ask this because vaccinations under 4 weeks of age are not recommended. First of all, the immune system is not mature enough to deal with the vaccine, but also secondly, for the parvovirus vaccine for puppies and the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 vaccine for kittens, there is a risk of harm to the brain development if kittens and puppies get vaccinated too early. I don't actually know how prevalent the risk is. I would have to look that up. But either way, like under 4 weeks of age, we wouldn't vaccinate anyways because the vaccine would likely not work. The next question we then need to ask is the kitten or puppy housed in a high-risk environment? So what is a high-risk environment? A shelter is high risk. The street, pagoda, markets are high risk. Veterinary clinics are high risk. But also basically any multi-pet household is a high risk. The more animals there are in an environment, the higher the risk. If the kitten or puppy is housed in a low-risk environment, meaning in someone's home, strictly indoors, no other animals around, or maybe another cat or another dog that is vaccinated that has also not been exposed to high-risk environments, the vaccination schedule would usually start at 6 weeks of age, not 8 weeks. And then every 3 to 4 weeks until the kitten or puppy is 16 to 20 weeks old. A lot of numbers. Basically what that means, start at 6 weeks old and vaccinate 3 to 4 times. For young animals housed in high-risk environments, we need to change that vaccination schedule. So we usually start at 4 weeks of age. We vaccinate every 2 weeks until they are 16 to 20 weeks old. Again, a lot of numbers, but basically what that means, you start at 4 weeks old and they get up to 6 to 8 core vaccinations. All right, another question we then need to consider, is the kitten or puppy sick? If they are already sick with anything and the immune system is a bit low, if they remain in a low-risk environment, the vaccination can be given a little bit later, once the animal is recovered. But if a kitten or puppy is sick and lives in a high-risk environment, a vaccination should still be given because the risk of the vaccination is actually much lower than the risk of the animal that already has a weak immune system to develop additional diseases. So that means if an animal, for example, has to go into a shelter, if it has to go to a vet clinic to be hospitalized, a vaccination should be given to protect the animal from additional diseases. In a high-risk setting, there is actually almost no reason why an animal shouldn't be vaccinated, even if it is sick.
So sort of key points for the vaccination is we've got to vaccinate everybody, regardless of where they came from, regardless of what their health status is. What I usually teach the students is unless the animal is dying in front of you, then it needs to get a vaccination when it's entering if it's going to stay in the shelter. If it's so sick that you think a vaccine is going to harm it, then it needs to be taken to someplace where it can get advanced medical care, or it needs to be humanely euthanized.
Then there are obviously several more questions that should be considered. For example, has this animal had a previous reaction to the vaccine? Is this animal placed suddenly from a low-risk environment into a high-risk environment? This could also be a boarding facility. Maybe it's an animal that usually stays at home with its owner. The owner is going on holiday. The animal is going to a boarding facility. Therefore, considerations need to be made about the vaccination. And we need to consider what kind of vaccination type is being used. All these are questions that you should discuss with your veterinarian. And ideally, a veterinarian will ask you all these questions and will try to determine not only the current medical status of your animal, but also the circumstances and the environment it lives in. All right, this was a lot of information, a lot of numbers, and I understand this is all very difficult to remember. But there is luckily a very fantastic tool online. I will link the website below. It is a lifestyle-based vaccination calculator developed by the American Animal Hospital Association. And I will go through it with you by showing you one example. All right, here we are. This is the website with the fantastic vaccination calculator. So again, this is from AAHA, which is the American Animal Hospital Association. And if you look closely over here, you can click on the vaccination calculator. Right now, we are actually in the cat section, but they do have this for dogs as well. It's very simple. You just put in some basic information. So for example, let's assume you are the pet owner. You would like to get information about a pet that you keep in your home, so a low-risk environment. Let's assume the cat is 6 to 7 weeks old. We select that. All right, and these are the recommendations. So as we can see, it is selecting kittens 6 weeks to 7 weeks of age. The vaccinations that are recommended are herpes virus, 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 virus, and pan-leukopenia virus. These are the ones that I mentioned initially as well. They recommend to vaccinate now, the first one, and then revaccinate every 3 to 4 weeks until 16 to 20 weeks of age. They will also explain boosters, which I have not included in this video. As you can see, it's super easy. Let's do one more example with just a tiny little change. So I'm going back to start over. This time, instead of pet, we are going to select shelter house. This means basically any animal that lives in a high-risk environment. Again, we will select 6 to 7 weeks of age. You can see this time there are actually more questions here. Are you vaccinating against FPV, which is feline pan-leukopenia virus? The answer is yes. What type of vaccine do you use? Usually the recommended one is actually here, this one, so we are going to select it. Now let's have a look at the vaccination recommendations. Okay, now we can see here we are selecting shelter house cat, 6 to 7 weeks of age. Again, the vaccines recommended are herpes virus, 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 virus, and pan-leukopenia virus. Schedule is a single dose at intake or at least 1 week before shelter entry. That is actually ideal so that the vaccine can start protecting the animal even before it gets into a high-risk environment. From there, we vaccinate every 2 weeks, and we also vaccinate until 16 to 20 weeks of age. Okay, and I'm back. So now just a few more additional points before we finish. I can't believe I have to say this, but a dog vaccination does not protect cats and vice versa. If your vet recommends to you to give a dog vaccine to a cat, choose a different vet. Because chances are, if your vet is doing this, his understanding of basic animal diseases is incredibly low, and your animal is not well taken care of with such a professional. Next, there are a variety of different vaccinations that work slightly differently. So the fastest way for an animal to get protection is by using a so-called modified live virus, or MLV. So especially in an animal that lives in a high-risk environment, make sure that your animal receives a modified live virus vaccination for core vaccinations. The reason is that these vaccinations can usually start working within a couple of hours or days. They don't give full protection, but they can start to protect at least a little bit. There are other vaccines that are not modified live, and they actually can take several weeks to start working. Vaccinations are life-saving. It is an investment that is essential for the animal's well-being. According to the ASV guidelines, which is basically the gold standard for shelter veterinarians and shelter care, animals must receive a vaccination on intake into a shelter. To expand on this notion, any animal entering or living in a high-risk environment must be vaccinated. Allowing animals in these kind of environments to be exposed to diseases is cruel. And frankly, it is a form of neglect. So please make sure to vaccinate your animals. So for the next point, just a reminder, I can't cover everything there is to know about vaccinations in this video. There is a lot I have not covered. There are different vaccinations and different core vaccinations that would be interesting to cover depending on what region you are in. We didn't cover rabies. We didn't cover vaccinations for adult animals. We didn't cover boosters. All of this is potentially a topic for another video or other videos, but it's not part of this video. Okay, finally, be kind to your vet. The veterinary medicine and veterinary science field is huge. There is a lot of information that is coming out all the time. Something we're learning right now might already be obsolete next year, which means if you do go to a vet and the vet does not know these new recommendations, that does not make him or her a bad vet. Show them the guidelines and see if your vet is interested in learning more about these new publications. And then together with your vet, discuss what is the best possible vaccination course for your animal. Okay, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. I hope you got new insights. If you have any comments, any questions, please feel free to write in the comment section. If you have any ideas for future videos, anything that you are interested in, feel free to also message in our comment section. If you like the videos and you want to see more, then please also like and subscribe. And I will see you during the next video.